A pair of eyes pop up above the surface on Australia's Kennedy River. It has spotted Kevin Darmody sitting on the riverbank, casting his fishing rod into the water. It is the largest croc in that stretch of the river, and it stalks closer, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. But it isn't the only croc on the hunt that day. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. In April 2023, 65-year-old Kevin Darmody was on a fishing trip with his friends, one of whom was visiting from New South Wales. He owned the Peninsula Hotel in Laura, Queensland, Australia, and was well known in the community. His nickname was Stumpy due to his small stature, but he was a tough man who loved the outdoors and especially loved fishing. On Saturday, April 29, 2023, Kevin and his friends headed to the remote and rugged Ringiru, or Lakefield National Park. Set amongst 500,000 hectares, the park is teeming with wildlife, least of all, crocodiles. Visitors can explore in four-wheel drives, on foot, or in boats. When the friends arrived along the Kennedy River, they split up, each finding the perfect spot along the riverbank to settle down and cast their rods in. Straight away, Kevin spotted a small crocodile, but shooed it away. He threw some stones at it in the water, and it sank beneath the surface, disappearing into the murky river. The river is well known to be teeming with barramundi, the kind of fish the men were after. As Kevin began fishing, enjoying the peace and quiet of the great outdoors, he was unaware that he was being watched by a much larger crocodile. Just below the surface, hidden by the shadows of the overhanging trees, was an enormous saltwater crocodile. Its eyes popped up silently through the surface of the water, its nostrils barely making a ripple. Many people refuse to fish along that stretch of the river. If you drive past at night and shine a light, you will certainly see the reflective eyes of several crocodiles lying in wait. Usually in Australia, where there are fish, there are crocodiles. Famed crocodile expert and conservationist, the late Steve Irwin, was well known for releasing problem crocodiles into the Kennedy River. The national park has been declared an area for crocodile conservation. They were protected there, and anglers knew the dangers of getting too close to the water. The largest resident croc was estimated to be about 4 meters, 13 feet long. Some regulars to the river predicted that the crocodile would attack someone one day. It was always bold. It could be seen stalking you, moving right up to the edge of the bank when it saw someone walking along it. Occasionally, there would be a splash in the water, and one of the ducks would disappear. The crocodiles were always on the lookout for a meal. As Kevin cast his lure into the water, he reeled it back slowly, repeating the process over and over. But then, as he was reeling the line back in, there was a tug. He struck the rod upwards, but realized that it wasn't a fish. Instead, his hook had caught on some underwater vegetation. He pulled the rod back, hoping to release the lure, but it was stuck fast. There are two scenarios that happened next. One suggests that Kevin was careless, a claim that his friends and family fiercely deny. The other suggests that Kevin slipped and fell into the water. Here, we describe both possibilities. Kevin could see where his taut fishing line fed into the water. It was just a few feet from the riverbank. Then when he reached the water's edge, he took a single step into the cool water of the river. All of a sudden, there was an explosion from the water, and a crocodile erupted outwards. Kevin let out a cry of alarm as he was seized in the crocodile's jaws. Less than a second later, he was dragged into the water. There was a swirl, and he was gone. Nobody saw a thing, but his friends heard his cry, followed by a large splash. They knew something had happened and raced to Kevin's fishing spot. His friend John Patey, who was visiting from New South Wales, took less than half a minute to get to the spot. When he arrived, there was no sign of Kevin. His fishing rod was gone. His hat had disappeared. It immediately became clear that Kevin had been taken by a crocodile, and they ran for help. No lure is worth risking your life for, but sitting on the riverbank fishing as he had done so for many years, Kevin had let his guard down. He had become complacent. A momentary lapse in concentration and common sense had cost Kevin his life. Or had it? Maybe that's not exactly what happened. Those who knew Kevin knew he wouldn't have been so careless. They said that Kevin was always warning people to be careful in croc country. Making a careless mistake like stepping into the water to retrieve a lure just didn't sound like Kevin. Kevin's friend John, who was the first to arrive at the scene, thought that Kevin had fallen into the water rather than entered to retrieve a lure. Beside Kevin's flip-flops was a large goanna. Before he heard the almighty splash and a cry for help, John thinks he heard Kevin shouting at something. Perhaps he was trying to shoo the goanna away and lost his footing and fell into the water, only to be taken by the crocodile seconds later. There was no sign of any water on the riverbank, suggesting that the crocodile or crocodiles had not leapt out of the water, as had first been assumed by experts. A search immediately began for Kevin, but there was no sign of him. For the first few moments under the water, he would have been fighting, trying to pry open the reptile's jaws. But saltwater crocodiles are thought to have the strongest bite force in the animal kingdom, reaching pressures up to 3,700 psi, more than 5 times stronger than that of a lion. Kevin had little hope. Recently, another man was taken by a crocodile, but miraculously lived to tell the tale. When he was dragged down to the bottom of the river, he managed to gouge the crocodile's eyes, and it released him. But Kevin wasn't so lucky. The crocodile would have drowned him within minutes, taking him far below the river surface, where there was no hope of escape. As the hours passed, hopes for Kevin faded. There was now no doubt in his friends' minds that he had been taken by a crocodile. Wildlife officials were called in, and they scoured the river for any crocodiles nearby. Less than 1 mile upriver, they came across 2 crocodiles lying just below the surface. Suspecting that at least one of these 2 was responsible for Kevin's disappearance, the officers took aim and shot both of them within 10 seconds of each other. They hauled the bodies out of the water and cut them open on the riverbank, right then and there. They needed answers for Kevin's family and friends. Remarkably, inside both the crocodiles were human remains. They belonged to Kevin. One of the crocodiles was huge, measuring 4.1 meters, 13.5 feet. It was likely the well-known croc that had lived along that stretch of river for decades, observed cautiously by fellow anglers. Wildlife officers had caught the culprits, but it was difficult to say exactly what had happened. It would have been incredibly rare for both crocodiles to have struck Kevin at the same time, working together to bring him down. Equally, it would have been unusual for the larger crocodile to allow the smaller one to feast on its kill. Whatever happened, whether the 65-year-old deliberately stepped into the water or accidentally fell, Kevin was gone. The fishing trip had ended in tragedy, and there was proof that he had been snatched by not 1, but 2 crocodiles. Every year in Australia, 1 or 2 people are killed by saltwater crocodiles. This is a very small number given the number of crocodiles in Australian waterways. Ever since a ban on hunting the prehistoric reptiles came into force in 1971, their numbers have exploded, but thankfully, human-crocodile conflicts are relatively rare. People know the dangers and stay away from the water's edge.